Hey, welcome to Ask Elihu. We're going to take a look at trends and try to answer the question, should we bet the Clippers tonight on Game 3 at home? So here we have the game spread. The Clippers are a 1-point dog for the game, but they're a 1.5-point favorite for the first half. And that's pretty unusual. Most of the time, it's going to be the same sign. If you have a 1-point dog, it's probably going to be a half-point dog, or typically these spreads are 50-60%. The first half spread is 50 or 60% of the game spread. So having one where it's sometimes it's more than that, or where the sign is flipped, is unusual. And we're only the only time I typically see that is in these game threes of playoff series. So let's take a look at some data. Now we're only looking at game threes when a home team is down, and one of the metrics I want to look at first is just how often do they cover. Now, one way to do this in Excel, you compare the result to the spread. If it's more, it's a 1. If it's less, it's a 0. And then you don't want to forget about pushes. So if they're equal, you give it credit for half. So if we look at how often is this trend covering, through 2017, we see that this trend is covering 65% of the time on a sample of 100 games. So that's curious. That's about 3 standard deviations above what you'd expect, or a 1 in 1,000 occurrence. And these things happen. 1 in 1,000 events happen. So should you bet this blindly? Let's see how the trend continued. And so if you look and see how do we do on our next 24 games, the trend here actually continued. So this wasn't the perfect example of a trend that blows up in your face. And I'm not going to, even though the trend seemed to continue, I'm not going to recommend you bet the Clippers on the first half. But let's look at some other data to say why. Another metric I created is what I'm going to call a jumbo first half. How often is that first half spread inflated? So let's look at some more data again. So here I said if the first half divided by the game spread is more than 0.7, it's big, otherwise it's not. Now this isn't going to work perfectly when you have these weird games with sign differences. But let's look and see how often do we have a jumbo game through 2017. So we look at the sample here, and through 2017, 11% of the games had a really big spread. If we go 2018 to the present, we see that 58% of the games have these big spreads. So the market has clearly changed. It's you're paying a much higher price to bet these first halves. And you see that when you look at the line. So you have, instead of paying a half, instead of getting a first half spread of plus a half, it's minus 1.5. So this is 1.5, or even 2 points more than what you'd expect to have to pay if you wanted to play the Clippers. Now, if each of these points is worth 5.5%, this trend is much worse today than it was 4 years ago. So you're paying a premium of at least 5.5%. I mean, if you look at the average spreads through 2017 were about 0.9. This shouldn't be percentages, this should be numbers. And if you look at it, since 2018, it's 1.8. So what that tells you is you're paying a much higher price. If you're paying a full point worse for the same situation, the odds are the market isn't off that much. I can't, I'd be surprised, I'd be shocked. So no one can beat a trend unless the trend is a monster. But if it were a monster trend, the market would correct for it. So when you're looking at a trend, you have to say not just has it continued, but what is causing the trend? And the most important question is, what is the right number? So on this game with the Clippers being a 1-point home dog, that's the big market. We assume that's the right number, that the Clippers are 1-point dog. But what is the right first half spread? And if you don't know that, you have no business betting any kind of trend. Now, in this case, I don't know what the right number is. Is it inflated? Is it not? I don't know. And because I don't know, and because I can't explain why this number is the way it is, but it's consistently off like this, I can't touch it. So in short, if you can't explain a trend, you don't bet it.